Hello and welcome to week 11. So this week we're moving on to another theorist that I can almost guarantee you probably have not heard of before, because in all honesty, I had not heard of him before actually taking this class. So this week we're looking at Donald Shawn, or something close to that, because his last name is German. And just like last week, I don't speak that language. So we're going to do the best that we can. But what I think you're going to find interesting is that many of the tenets of his theory are actually very familiar to us. I just didn't know that they were actually attributed to him. So hopefully what you're seeing, especially the last couple of weeks, and it's going to continue through the next couple of weeks, is with these theorists that maybe we're not as familiar with, I've really tried to make sure that the PowerPoint is a little bit more detailed. There might be a few more resources and graphics in there because when we looked at theorists like Vygotsky and Piaget, those are theorists that we have learned about in just about every psychology and education class that we've taken. But some of these theorists, especially the ones as we get into these later chapters, are ones that maybe we're not as familiar with because maybe they're not part of the educational system. But what I think the textbook does a really great job of doing is making sure that you understand how it's actually integrated into education. So for instance, with Shawn's theory, he actually was more of a philosopher. So all of his degrees were in philosophy, but he took his experiences and as he was creating the thoughts on his theory, we're able to see how we put them into practice in the educational world. So some of the things that are attributed to him that I did not realize were things like reflection. There's going to be some other terms in his theory that maybe you're not as familiar with: espouse theory, theory and practice, single loop and double loop learning. And so I tried to make sure that when I created this PowerPoint that I put enough information in there so that you could see exactly what it is that they're referring to. But in all honesty, what I think is the hallmark of his theory is the act of reflection. So when we're thinking about teaching, reflection is absolutely critical to the success of the teaching that we're actually doing. So as I mentioned in the announcement, think about when we teach a lesson. When we're done teaching that lesson, we have to reflect on whether or not it went the way that we wanted it to, if we would make changes to it in the future. So for instance, if we have taught a lesson and we find that the majority of the class seems to understand it, but when it came time to actually do individual practice, they're not able to put it into application, then we need to go back and figure out what was it that created that disconnect between the two. And so that's what all great teachers do. We look back at every single thing we do and say, did this go the way that I wanted it to? What would I change in the future? And understanding, as Shawn mentions in his theory, is that sometimes we have to make sure that we're making adjustments based on the setting and the population that we're working with. One of the things I think was really great that they brought out in his theory was something he called technical rationality. And if we put that into the educational world, what that means is sometimes teachers are prone to sticking kind of to the black and white of a theory without actually looking to see, does this theory work with the students that I'm working with? And I think that is a huge danger, is that when teachers decide that they're going to teach the same way no matter the students that they have, we're actually creating the problem. We're setting some of our students up for failure because maybe they don't learn that way, or maybe they're not as advanced as you thought they were supposed to be. So I really hope that you're going to enjoy reading through his theory this week and kind of seeing what it was that he thought about reflection in action, which is kind of thinking on your feet as something is happening, and reflection on action, which is going to be looking back and saying, what kinds of things do we want to change? One of the best ways to think of reflection and action as we're talking about teaching is those are the teachable moments. So, for instance, if you're trying to teach a lesson to the children and all of a sudden a fire truck pulls up outside, I guarantee you're not going to be able to hold their attention anymore. So, what that means is I need to make a change. In the moment, I need to kind of go with the flow. And that's what his reflection and action is kind of hinting at. So, when you look at this week's folder, you're going to find here's the PowerPoint. As always, I tried to find a quote, but in all honesty, a lot of his direct quotes that are out there are in German. And so what I found instead was a theory from Dewey, who that is really where the idea of reflection came from for Sean. So I thought it would be great to see what it was that Dewey said. But then you can kind of see here's a graphic about reflective practice. These two are actually presentations that he gave. It was difficult to find some of his primary source material that is open access, and I certainly don't want you having to pay for anything additional. So this one specifically is the transcript of a presentation that he gave, and then this is actually his writing for a presentation. And then, as always, I've got a couple of videos. So this is a short one just talking about the act of reflection. This is lengthy, and so I'm not expecting that you are going to watch it this week or maybe not even in one sitting. But I do think that it's important when we're able to actually hear what the theorist is saying from his own words. And so this is one of the few that I could find. So once you've gone through all of the textbook and all of the resources, as always, complete your journal. It seems like everyone really has gotten the hang of the journals and is understanding the purpose behind them. And hopefully what you're seeing is you're going to be able to take a lot of what you've already written in your journals to be able to put it into your final philosophy paper. So I think that's it for this week. The only reminder is that your book review is due by the end of next week. So make sure that you have checked those requirements, go back through the APA formatting and the resources in the video that I did on that. But I hope that you enjoy reading about Sean this week and his thoughts and how they apply to education. So have a great week, and I'll see you next week.